Welcome back. I think this qualifies as a madness board. I think there's enough names on the board for it to qualify as a madness board. End of March, I did a video talking about the upcoming UFA class. And so at the top of the board, I've got ones that I've talked about, but I'm going to go over this again because things have changed for some of these players since the end of March in terms of maybe their value on the free agent market. The playoffs can greatly enhance the value of players. Starting with Sam Reinhart, he's had good playoffs. The Florida Panthers win the Stanley Cup. That's only going to bring his asking price up. There's been discussions about how much he would get paid in Florida and whether or not the cap is what Barkov makes. I think his cap hits $9.5 million. If that's the case, Reinhart would likely have to take less to stay in Florida. Would I be surprised if he did? No, especially if they win the Stanley Cup. You want to win another one when you win one, right? Stamkos probably staying in Tampa Bay. I can't see him going anywhere else. Jake Gensel, lots of talk right now about Gensel. And when there's lots of teams looking at Gensel, honestly, if I'm Jake, I'm probably not signing in Carolina. Not because I don't want to play in Carolina. You could still sign later, but you probably want to see how much other teams are going to offer and what those contracts are going to look like before you circle back with Carolina. It just makes financial sense. Marchessault, lots to talk about Marchessault. I do think he stays in Vegas, but the window's open there for him to maybe leave and decide he wants to take big money somewhere. And could you blame him? He's got a Conn Smythe trophy. He's got a 40-goal season this year. I wouldn't blame him if he cashed in. Raymond, restricted free agent. Not much to say with Raymond in Detroit, but I'm wearing Detroit for a reason. We're going to go through it on the board. Matt Duchene in Dallas. Solid run for the Stars in the playoffs, although Duchene has not been prominent. I would be very surprised if he returns to Dallas next year. He's been good for them this year. Next year, you get to let a lot of the kids play more prominent roles. Pavelski, if he wants to return, he will. It's just a matter of it'll probably be another one-year contract, and they'll figure it out. When they want to cross that bridge, they will. Seth Jarvis, can't see him going anywhere else. Casey Mittelstadt was excellent for Colorado in the playoffs, so he's probably going to cash in. Luukkonen, not much to add with Luukkonen. He had a very good season with Buffalo, especially the second half. Jeremy Swayman, we know he's going to get paid. I've seen ridiculous cap hits being thrown out there for Swayman, like an $8 to $9 million range. I don't know if he gets that high, but it should be a long-term contract, and the cap hit's probably going to be pretty high to keep him in Boston. Quentin Byfield, quieter second half than first half, but there's enough tools there that I don't know if the playoffs hurt him. I don't know if that leads it more towards a shorter-term deal, but it'll be fascinating to see what Rob Blake does there. Necas, a lot of talk about Necas and whether or not he's played his last game as a member of the Carolina Hurricanes. For salary cap reasons, Necas is probably going to be priced out, especially if they decide to keep Jake Gensel. In the event that Necas gets traded, that probably means a Gensel re-signing is incoming. Hronek, a lot of talk about Hronek. Hronek said he wasn't hurt. Now there's word that he might have been hurt during the second half of the playoffs. Either way, I don't know if he stays or if he goes, but I'm going to go back to what I've been saying. I trust the general manager in Vancouver. I trust the people in control of the Vancouver Canucks roster. I never said that when Jim Benning was in charge, and I wasn't saying it much last season either. But yeah, this season was really, really good for Vancouver. Whatever they decide to do, I trust them on it. Harley had a really strong first half with Dallas. His offense, goals-wise, fell off a bit in the second half. He's been quiet in the playoffs offensively, but the guy's absolutely fantastic. I think he's going to get a good deal there. Sider, we know what Sider brings. Again, Detroit Red Wing. There's a lot of money that's yet to be decided for Detroit. Toffoli probably goes to market. I'd be kind of surprised if he sticks around. Brady Shea, I think Carolina's going to do everything they can to hold on to him. Teravainen, we'll see. Again, it's going to depend on what happens with other players. Pesce, very likely that he's played his last game as a member of the Carolina Hurricanes. Carolina's going to go through some upheaval this offseason. A lot of talk I've seen about how the team's going to be very different. So those players done. Now we'll get into players I have not talked about yet. Ones that I did not talk about in the last video. Starting with Sean Monahan. His cap hit this year was $1.985 million. He finished the season in Winnipeg, of course, played 83 games in total, 26 goals, 33 assists, 59 points. He's 29 years of age. When a player's 29 or older, you're not likely going to see like a max contract. You're not going to see 8 years. Maybe 6, but in Monahan's case, with his offense not being quite where it was, say, a few years ago, probably a shorter-term deal. But Monahan showed in Winnipeg he can still play, and he can still play a pretty prominent role and do well. I don't think he hurt his value in Winnipeg after the trade. Jonathan Drouin only made $825,000 this year. That was the cap hit. 79 games, 19 goals, 37 assists, 56 points. He's 29 years of age. I think if there's a way for Colorado to keep him, I think they will. I think if he wants to stay, I think they'll figure it out. But if Drouin wants to make a bunch of money, he may end up going elsewhere. But again, I'm not sure what kind of bidding war we'd see for Drouin once we get around to July, but it'll be fascinating to see what happens there. Shane Gostisbehere. So his cap hit this year, $4.125 million. He's 31 years of age. It kind of surprised me he's that old. 81 games, 10 goals, 46 assists, I should say, 56 points. Gostisbehere is fantastic on the power play. There's no shortage of teams that could really use his help on the blue line. In fact, the transplanted Arizona to Utah team could absolutely look at Gostisbehere and look at bringing him back if he reaches market. If Detroit wants to keep him around, we'll see. But his cap hit, I don't think, will change very much in the offseason. It'll go up. I don't think it'll be $4.125 million, but I don't know that it'll go up by a lot. Vlad Tarasenko, watch that one age like milk. $5 million cap hit for Tarasenko this year. He's 32 years of age. Something to keep in mind. 76 games, 23 goals, 32 assists, 55 points. Tarasenko has been good for Florida during this run, where they're only a couple of games away from the Stanley Cup final, potentially, at the time I'm recording this. But Tarasenko's definitely not the player he was, say, 5 years ago. Who is? And so the reality is he's probably looking at a 1 or a 2 year deal. Might be around the $5 million mark again, because the salary cap's going up, so we should start seeing salaries going up for everybody. But maybe Tarasenko stays at that $5 million number. Maybe it drops next season. Chandler Stevenson in Vegas, $2.75 million cap hit. That's an absolute bargain for Stevenson. This year, 75 games, 16 goals, 35 assists, 51 points. He is 30 years of age, so that again will restrict the length of the contract. I've seen Boston linked to him because anytime a center's available, people are going to be like, oh, Boston's going to want him. If they're good on the faceoffs and if they can put up some points, Boston's going to be tied to the team, whether there's any truth to it or not, because clearly that's where Boston fell short in the playoffs, right? So Stevenson, we'll see whether or not he does end up going east, but I don't think Vegas has the cap space to bring him back. Not that that has stopped them before, I agree, but I don't think they have the space. Adam Henrique, 34 years of age. His cap hit this year, $5.825 million. 82 games, 24 goals, 27 assists, 51 points. He's looked good when he's been in the lineup for the Oilers in the playoffs thus far. Of course, being on a team that goes far in the playoffs will bring up your asking price. However, for Henrique, at 34 years of age, I don't know how high the asking price is going to be, and I can't see him getting more than that $5.82 million. And again, that's the cap hit, not necessarily salary. I'm not worried about the salary, just going by the cap hit. I don't think Henrique's goes up. He's been solid for the Oilers. If they can find a way to keep him around, might be a good move. Max Domi, 80 games, 9 goals, 38 assists, 47 points for Toronto. 29 years of age. His cap hit this year was $3 million. I'm kind of torn on Domi. So Domi's been through a number of teams now. And so, I'm always on Mike Sillinger watch. Is anybody going to ever reach Mike Sillinger's record of 10 teams in the NHL being played for? Domi's got a chance. I think he's already on team number 7. But I think he likes it in Toronto. I think they like him too. The problem is I said that about Chicago too, and then he moved on and he didn't go back to Chicago. But Domi played well this year. The problem is he only had the 9 goals. So you can't justify a big raise for Domi based on the numbers. And yet I thought he played well. I thought he played well in center when they had him there too. But for Toronto to hold on to Domi, you're probably going to have to trade somebody else out because the salary cap being where it is and the amount of changes they want to make, it'll be interesting to see if Domi ends up sticking around or if they make major changes and Domi ends up out as well. Patrick Kane, 35 years of age, $2.75 million cap hit with Detroit this past season. Played 50 games, had 20 goals, 27 assists, 47 points. I have never seen a player come back from the kind of hip surgery he has and look as good as he did. Now the question becomes one of, does he return to Detroit? What happens there? Again, I don't think the cap hit is going to be any concern for Patrick Kane. He wants a chance to win. And so whatever team he feels like he has a chance to win with, I think that's where he's going to go. I wouldn't be entirely surprised to see him go back to Detroit to try to finish what he started there. So we'll see. Elias Lindholm, $4.85 million cap hit this past season. He played for Vancouver, 15 goals, 29 assists, 44 points. I think that's in 76 games. I think it was 76 games for Lindholm. But he's 29 years of age, and Lindholm's name has been tied to the Boston Bruins because he's a center, and he had a pretty good pretty good playoff for the Vancouver Canucks. And so with Lindholm being prominent for the Canucks in the playoffs and being one of their better forwards, that's going to take an asking price, which really took a beating after he arrived in Vancouver during the regular season, and it's going to bring that asking price back up. The Canucks would like to hold on to him. I don't know if financially they can. I can't see them being able to hold on to Lindholm and re-sign Hronek. One or the other would have to go. It may end up being both. But Lindholm could be a solid addition for Boston. He's just not a first-line center. He's more geared towards second-line center. Same with Stevenson. So I could see one or the other going to Boston. Be interesting to see what they do. Anthony Mantha, $5.7 million cap hit for him this year. 29 years of age. 74 games, 23 goals, 21 assists, 44 points in total. But during his time in Vegas, I don't know. I mean, I know he got hurt. I know he was playing hurt at other times too. It just never seemed to really click in Vegas for Anthony Mantha. So I'd be very surprised if he decided to stay or if they decided to hold on to him. But Mantha, interesting player, and definitely somebody the analytics community absolutely loves. So if you cheer for a team that really is heavy on the analytics, they might be looking at Anthony Mantha. Mantha might be the guy that they're looking at picking up this offseason. Tyler Bertuzzi had a cap hit of $5.5 million with Toronto this past season. He's 29 years of age, same as Max Domi, and brought in for much similar reason as Domi. 80 games played, 21 goals, 22 assists, 43 points. One thing that I've seen, and I don't know if there's any accuracy to this, is maybe he'd want to end up going back to Boston. He had a good run with Boston last year after he got traded there from Detroit. The reality is that he could be on the move again. I think Toronto would probably like to keep Bertuzzi. I think he gives them a little bit of something different in the lineup. And yet when you lose in the first round, again, it is hard to justify bringing a lot of that team back to try to go through it again, especially with the number of times Toronto's had problems getting out of the first round, or of course last year was getting out of the second round. Daniel Sprong had a $2 million cap hit this year, 27 years of age, 76 games, 18 goals, 25 assists, 43 points. Now with Sprong, he did have a much quieter second half than first half. The problem is when a guy's got 18 goals during the season, there's a general manager somewhere that may very well look and say, you know what, Sprong can produce in this league. Maybe Seattle takes Sprong back, that kind of thing. But yeah, he did get quieter the second half of the season, absolutely. The $2 million cap hit, it probably stays about there. But we've seen before with Sprong where he's had to do the professional tryout. Do we see him on a tryout again? That'll be an interesting thing to look at. And then the one that I was debating about whether or not to have on the board was David Perron. So that's why he's here, even though he's got more points than some of the other guys I've talked about. $4.75 million cap hit for Perron this year, 76 games, 17 goals, 30 assists, 47 points. He is 36, so I would expect a one-year deal. And if he wants to stay in Detroit, fine. If not, that's fine as well. I think there will be teams looking at Perron. The offense not being where it was, again, another case of the offense dropping off. He's in his mid-30s. But the experience is there, and I think if he decides, I want a new challenge, I think there will be GMs ready to, get those checkbooks going and bring him in. Does anybody use checkbooks anymore? All right, Anthony Duclair, $3 million cap hit for him this year. And when he arrived in Tampa, it was a fantastic story. 28 years of age, 73 games, 24 goals, 18 assists, 42 points. I also want to credit San Jose a bit here. San Jose gets Duclair, and obviously the start of the season, San Jose's offensive numbers are terrible. Duclair's numbers weren't good either. At the time they traded him to Tampa, Duclair was trending in the right direction. So I think they did a good job of waiting to trade him until his value was higher. But if Duclair wants to stay in Tampa, odds are he's probably going to take a lower cap hit, less money next season. But a lot of players do that for Tampa and for Florida. Yes, there's tax reasons. There's also the fact that players want a chance to win a Stanley Cup. You might take a little bit less money for your regular season, hoping for a longer run during the postseason. So, yeah, Duclair looked like a pretty natural fit. I would not be surprised to see him return to Tampa Bay. Warren Fogle, one of my favorites, of course, 28 years of age, cap hit this year of $2.75 million. I don't think there's an Oilers fan who's going to complain about that. 82 games played, 20 goals, 21 assists, 41 points. I am a big fan of his work ethic. I think Fogle's absolutely fantastic, and his play in the playoffs, I don't think drops what his ask might be. Think along the lines of like Barclay Goodrow. If the Oilers end up going on a run and win the Stanley Cup, Fogle could end up with a Goodrow type contract. He's 28, so could you see a 5-year deal for him? I think you could, and he's earned every penny. Jake DeBrusk, $4 million cap hit for him this year with Boston. He's 27 years of age, 80 games, 19 goals, 21 assists, 40 points. Consistency's been the issue with DeBrusk. At times, he's fallen into a doghouse with whichever coach is coaching the team, but the talent is still there. So if DeBrusk does hit the market on July the 1st, I do expect there to be not necessarily a bidding war, but I mean, at least a skirmish, a bidding skirmish. We'll put it that way. I think DeBrusk, because he's 27, a little bit younger than some of the other ones on the board, I think he'll probably get a longer-term deal. I don't think he returns to Boston. I'd be a little bit surprised if he did. And so we'll see. We'll see what happens there. Now, some UFA goaltenders. So here we've got some UFA goaltenders, starting with Cam Talbot. 36 years of age, 27, 20, and 3 record. He had a $1 million cap hit this year, .913 save percentage in LA. He is a glass half full, glass half empty kind of goaltender, depending on how you look at it. He's either a veteran who on 27 games had a good save percentage this year, or he's the goaltender that in the first round had his struggles and got replaced by Riddick. So it really is dependent on how you see it. Cam Talbot, his value in the offseason and what he gets for a contract will be interesting. I would not be surprised to see him end up with a job as a backup next year in the NHL. Again, due to age and just due to the fact that he was the backup by the end of the playoffs for the LA Kings. Ilya Samsonov, you want to talk about a roller coaster ride? Samsonov's season was that. At a $3.55 million cap hit. At age 27, he goes 23, 7, and 3 this season with an .890 save percentage. Famously waived to be sent down to the Marlies. Did well, came back up, did well. But it's one game on, one game off for Samsonov. So I do think it's going to be Woll that's the guy in Toronto next season, but they need another goaltender. And I don't think it's going to be Samsonov. Martin Jones isn't on the board. I don't think they bring Jones back either. I think they're going to look for someone else. I mean, I don't want to say Cam Talbot, but he's right there on the board. And Talbot's shown he can be a starter, but I think if Talbot was signed by Toronto, that Leaf fans might have some concerns. But that being said, Samsonov, I think under the right circumstance, in the right place, can be a good goaltender, but that consistency just hasn't been there for him to be a starter. Laurent Brossoit, $1.75 million cap hit with Winnipeg this season. 31 years of age, 15, 5, and 3 record, .927 save percentage. Had a very good run this season. Laurent Brossoit, as a backup, I think will be in some demand. I've seen some say that, well, maybe he should get a chance as a starter. He's in his 30s. I don't think he's going to get a chance to be a starter in the National Hockey League. But he's been quite good for the last few years. It was nice to see him have a good run in Winnipeg. And if the Jets decide to re-sign him and keep him, I don't think that would be an issue either. Hellebuck and Brossoit would be one of the best goalie tandems in the NHL. Anthony Stolarz in Florida. So again, a Florida Panther player, so nice long run here, potentially to a Stanley Cup. Stolarz isn't going to play, obviously. He's 30 years of age. I was kind of surprised he's that old already. $1.1 million is the cap hit for him this season. 16, 7, and 2 record with a .925 save percentage. Yeah, Anthony Stolarz has been quite good for Florida, and I think he's earned himself a raise during the offseason. And he's going to end up being a backup somewhere. So if Boston trades Ullmark, maybe you pick up Stolarz as the backup goaltender, and there you go. So it's going to be interesting to see where he ends up, or if Florida gives him a little bit of money. But yeah, Stolarz has been quite good, which makes me glad, because when he was in Anaheim, I thought he was better than his numbers, and now in Florida, I think it's kind of borne that out. Calvin Pickard, here's a story for you at 32 years of age. Suddenly back in the National Hockey League after being in the minors for quite some time. $762,500 cap hit. I think A, he stays in Edmonton, and B, he's going to get himself a raise. He's going to get that one-way contract, probably $1 to $1.5 million for next season. Again, I would think. I don't know what the Oilers are going to do with Jack Campbell, but I really don't see a situation where it's not necessarily Skinner and Pickard for next year, especially if they win the Stanley Cup, right? And then back to Detroit yet again. So another reason why I'm wearing a Detroit jersey here is Alex Nedeljkovic. Yeah, I've got five Detroit magnets on the board. Nedeljkovic, 28 years of age, had a cap hit of $1.5 million this season, 18-7-1 record with a .902 save percentage. Again, is he good enough to be a starter? Probably not. Can he be an effective backup? Absolutely. And so we'll probably see him on the move, I would think, in the offseason. Detroit's goaltending is going to be interesting to watch because Reimer's on an expiring contract as well. Husso struggled with injuries this past season. So is it Lyon and Husso next year? What's Detroit going to do? We'll find out in July. And then Lankinen, 29 years of age, $2 million cap hit. I've been a proponent of Lankinen for a long time. He went 11-6-1 with a .908 save percentage this year for Nashville. I still think he's a good goaltender. I don't see any of the goaltenders that are on the board here getting like a huge long-term deal. The long-term huge deal would go to Swayman or Luukkonen that I talked about in the last video. But there's some decent options here for a team that needs a goalie. Then we get into restricted free agents. Kirill Marchenko, 23 years of age in Columbus. Columbus has a bunch of guys on expiring contracts, a whole bunch of restricted free agents this year. 78 games played by Marchenko, 23 goals, 19 assists, 42 points. I think Marchenko is going to get some money. He's coming out of an entry-level contract. I didn't put up the value of the entry-level contracts because we know these guys are going to get a raise. But I will be interested to see, with Don Waddell now in charge in Columbus, how much does he think these guys are worth? How long is he going to give them? Like, is he going to do 2-year, 3-year, 4-year deals? And how many of these expired contracts will we see those players come back, or will we see Columbus qualify them, move them, that kind of thing? Marchenko's sticking around. I can't see that line, anything happening to that line, because that was their best line this year for large stretches. But we shall see. Because Chinakov's on an expiring contract as well, right? Chinakov's not on the board, but he's an RFA this summer as well. Eeli Tolvanen, first of two Seattle guys I'm going to talk about here. 25 years of age for Tolvanen. $1.45 million was his salary cap hit this year. 81 games, 16 goals, 25 assists, 41 points. Tolvanen didn't quite have the breakthrough with Seattle this year that I think they'd expected after they picked him up from Nashville last year on waivers. But he's still good. I think they bring him back, and I think his cap hit will probably be around the same, probably a little bit higher. Matty Beniers, 21 years of age, 77 games, 15 goals, 22 assists, 37 points. Definitely a sophomore slump for Matty Beniers. So do you sign him to that 8-year deal based on what you thought he might be able to do as a rookie? Do you still see that potential in him right now? I mean, I think you do, but the cap hit becomes a little tricky. And so, again, you're trying to bet on what the guy's going to do rather than what he's done. So I don't think his pay is going to reflect the numbers for this season. I think it's going to reflect where Ron Francis thinks he's going to be 2 or 3 years from now. So the cap hit could be pretty high. We could see a contract that might get the kind of blowback that the Jack Hughes contract got when that was signed. That contract turned out to be pretty good, actually. Sean Durzi. So here's the Utah magnet, because I don't have a Utah logo, of course, because why would I? So I got a bunch of Utah magnets made up with just stickers I found on Amazon. $1.7 million cap hit for Sean Durzi this past season in Arizona. Again, because the team's moved, there's the possibility we see things change, right? But Durzi, 76 games, 9 goals, 32 assists, 41 points. He's earned a raise. He's earned, I would say, at least double that $1.7 million cap hit, so 3.4, 3.5. He's very good on the power play. I think he played better in Arizona than he had the previous season in LA. And so, yeah, Durzi, has he only been in, I think, now I hear myself say it out loud, and I'm like, has he been there longer than a year? I don't think so, but either way, I think Durzi, good power play guy, I think he's going to get paid. Cole Perfetti in Winnipeg. This should be an interesting one, too, because 22 years of age, 71 games, 19 goals, 19 assists, 38 points. As previously mentioned, you got Toffoli, likely on his way out. Monahan maybe on his way out, too. With them on their way potentially out of town, Perfetti probably going to end up be a little bit higher on the roster. The 19 goals, though, tell you, he has the offensive upside that's there. And if they put a little bit of faith in him, I think he'll reward them. But again, what kind of contract he gets, probably just a bridge deal. Which brings us to Anton Lundell. Lundell has been quite good in these playoffs, and I think he's been sneaky good during the regular season too. The offense didn't necessarily match up, I think, with how well he played. He's 22 years of age, 78 games, 13 goals, 22 assists, 35 points. He's basically a Sasha Barkov light. He doesn't quite produce like Barkov. He's not the defensive stalwart that Barkov is, but he's good at both ends of the ice, and he's got some of those flashes of brilliance that Barkov has as well. So I think with Lundell, it's best to sign him to a longer-term deal if you can keep the cap hit down. If not, it'll probably be a bridge deal, but Lundell's one to keep an eye on because I think he could be in that 20 to 25 goal range soon. I think he's got the offensive acumen for that. And then Shane Pinto. I wanted to talk about Pinto, 23 years of age, played the 41 games because he got suspended for the other 41. 9 goals, 18 assists, 27 points. When Pinto came back to play for Ottawa this year, he was pretty darn good. And I thought he exceeded my expectations. I initially felt like during his career he'd probably be third-line center, but sure, he can play second line in Ottawa. And with a full season of Pinto, they may very well be able to get above that playoff line. I don't know if they stay there, but at least get above it to start the season, guys. But yeah, Pinto is, I think, a player that you could justify a longer-term deal with, say 5 or 6 years. But while there's been talk about how long the contract might be or for how much, I think, based on the fact he's a restricted free agent, he'll stay in Ottawa. It's just a matter of for how long and for how much that cap hit is going to end up being. So let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. We're roughly a month out from unrestricted free agent time. I may do a video too on the goalie carousel because we do often see a goalie carousel during the summer, and we may see that again this year. But let me know your thoughts. Which free agent are you most keeping your eye on? Which one do you think is going to be a steal for somebody? And which one do you think is going to end up being an anchor? That somebody's going to give them a really long-term, big money contract and regret it within a year. Let me know your thoughts. Hit like and subscribe if you haven't done so already. Thank you guys so much for all your support. I will talk to you again soon.